This is an interview in the series Women Around the World, a mosaic of feminine impression and inspiration in times of Corona. My name is Cécile Masson. I'm coach, host, and the author of Rose Letters of Love to Life. I have the pleasure to share this virtual space this morning with Maija van Langendonck. Maija, welcome.
Thank you. Hey.
Maija, you are the owner of a company Beyond Sea. You have a great track record. Would you like to just tell a bit more about yourself?
Oh, that's a big question. Yeah, Beyond Sea, actually co-founder. I founded it together with my husband. It's a bit of a nice story because in the name there's so many opportunities. We chose the name after a brainstorm session. Once the accountant told us we were shifting a construct of the company. So anyway, Beyond Sea, because it's beyond change, it's beyond culture, beyond CIYO, coming into your own program, which we share, right? It's beyond care. I feel right now with everything that's going on, a deep desire to see how can I support the community, which is another C, and people in care. How can we bring the caring back into the care? So anyway, so Beyond Sea came from that, and it's a bit like a smorgasbord, and I think I call myself a creative generalist because I've got multiple interests. But in a more conventional way, I've been a career woman. I've worked more than 25 years in multinationals and large organizations. So, but yeah, colorful life, colorful professional opportunity, and co-founder of Beyond Sea.
Thank you, Maija. Indeed, you have many talents. You have also many interests. We could have, well, this conversation also in Flemish. We chose for English because that's your mother's tongue. So tell me, how does COVID-19 affect you or impact you personally just now?
Well, it's funny. I had a conversation with a counselor the other day, and so I'm typically the person on the move, right? I'm the typical superwoman, can do it all, want it all. There's never a choice. It's always and for me. So I've always been on the move. I've always been overbooked. I got very restless when I had weekends that weren't booked. And now everything's wiped out, right? So, but it makes it also so much easier and simpler. So where people might have expected I got a bit, restless or allergic, it brings peace, right? There's no overload of choice. There just is. Now, that said, COVID also affected my business, right? So I used to give a lot of workshops and was traveling a lot. So that shifts, and most of it's just disappeared. But it's also a choice not to proactively go after too much new stuff because I've got a toddler at home, 3.5-year-old, and I got a young adult at home, 17. And so, yeah, the gift is also that I'm fully present, or a lot more present with my kids, which deepens the relationship. So it's a completely different experience that I believe I wanted, but I would never have got to if the outside world hadn't forced it on me.
The outside world will be, in this case, Corona.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, well, all the decision that the government takes around Corona, right? Because you wonder. I mean, I've noticed that I've been in observation mode around it, but predominantly from my microcosm. But I keep going like, okay, you go with the flow, and there's all these restrictions, and at the same time trying to go to the stats and the figures and to say, does this situation warrant the severity of the decisions that have been made? So it's kind of interesting to see whether the whole society is using this as a halt, even if maybe scientifically it might not be needed. I don't know. I mean, I'm obviously not a scientist, but it's interesting to see.
So for you, it has given you some more rest and peace and more family time as well. And you are a professional lady. How does it, you've just touched slightly on it, how does it affect you otherwise professionally as well?
Yeah, and again, I wanted to come back to the first point you said, rest and peace. I mean, part of my life is more complicated, right? Because you're doing a lot of baby entertainment, but which spurs creativity. I mean, I never thought I'd have to invent stories as I'm cycling through the woods, right? To just keep going. But so, and I meant less peace in the sense there's very little me time. So I have to pull out me time from the time with the family, which is different, right? So there's less me time than before. On professional level, the invitation there is to reinvent, but I've actually taken the choice right now to keep it quite low key. So yeah, we do some great things. I mean, I did feel a strong drive and passion to do something for the community in the way that makes sense for us. So investing more in our women's circle. And I've also launched an initiative for a local community project, which may be a bit on hold right now, but I want to continue to build, which will be a place for young entrepreneurs, but will be also a place where people from cross sections of the community can meet and create together. And COVID-19 or Corona informs that, and for me builds the business case. So I'm looking at work differently.
When I listen to you, I hear you say create together. Do you mean create a new kind of community sense, or do you mean actual projects where, as businesses, or how do you use the word create?
It could be anything. I think what seems to appear for me is that, and what I'm reading also in articles, is that the human side is more in the driver's seat than the pure commercial side. I mean, we all need to make a living, but when I think about the community project, real community project, that's not about a money making. That is about a sensible investment in the future, right? If the future is really around entrepreneurship and initiatives and innovation, then local communities by this I mean the gemeente, your local community, also needs to create an environment in which they can thrive. So that's what I want to achieve in the co-creation of that community initiative. When we think about the women leaders, it's about empowering what you do now. It's about the voice. Ideally, also that's a way in which I want to make my living, right?
So it's really about.
Go ahead.
Sorry, about taking initiatives locally. You live in Belgium, close to Brussels, but also impacting more global leadership development.
Yeah, I mean, I would never have thought of me as a local person. Again, in the past, I would have been a bit, I get restless. I want to uproot. I see myself as a contemporary nomad. If it was up to me, I would be traveling the world, right? Which from an ecological standpoint may not be the right thing to do. But I find more peace, as you said, in the confinement now, in seeing what's available local. And the funny thing is we will be moving in a year or two, so it seems a bit contradictory. But I do believe that my ambition does not need to be great. I do believe like the circles in a pond, right? If you throw a pebble in, the ripples will go out. So instead of focusing on the outer ripple, let me focus on the inner ripple. So what do I want to change within my family setting? I mean, that's what I need to learn. How do I create a welcoming and inclusive environment for my family, my first bubble? And then what can I do with that regard for the bubble around me? And that bubble could be geographically removed, but virtually close, right? Like we do with the women's leader, or it could be physically close. But yeah, I think it's more, I think that analogy works for me, the rings of the pond. In the past, I might have gone for the outside one. Now I'm going for the inside one.
It's a very interesting one because as you were saying earlier on, we share a leadership program together, the Coming Into Your Own. And there we really say it's the change starts within to actually radiate towards the outside. In the context of this pandemic that we are facing, do you recognize from a systemic point of view patterns where we have chances as well to to reorganize society, yourself, small, big? What do you see? What do you recognize?
I don't know if I've seen patterns. I just felt right now quite strongly to acknowledge that I'm living this from a place of privilege, right? I mean, I'm in a house, I can go outside, I can go into the garden, I can go to the park across the street as long as I keep distance. And it's essential for when, especially with the small one, to be able to have that physical moving and have some destination that we can go together so that he keeps his adventure. But so, yeah, I see it from a point of privilege. So I think the patterns may arise will be different from those that experience it from privilege like me and those that experience it from hardship, right? What I do see is it's potentially turning the world upside down if we choose to. What roles were previously understaffed, undervalued, not prioritized, now become essential, right? And the things that used to be the most powerful, the most interesting, are only so if they can show up authentically and with a human heart, right? If I think about politics and all the articles we read about the difference of approach between the female politicians and some of the male politicians and what kind of language is needed, that's something I see, right, as a pattern. The fact that the importance of carers and caregiving, whether it's in an old people's home or in a hospital, is now even put more in the limelight and not taken for granted, is huge. That said, there's so many others. I think about the stories we read about workers in very poor conditions doing the packaging work and the sorting work for the big Amazons of the world, right? So I'm also watching who's gaining from this, who's losing from this, and who's gaining from this pandemic. But again, I'm insufficiently informed to take a declaration, but I notice I'm looking at it.
You're looking at it, you say that you're looking at it from a privileged position. You're very much aware of that. You know as well, this is not the first interview I'm taking, so I'm taking the liberty to challenge here a little bit. Imagine that you would not be in a privileged situation, that you would not have a place to go outside, what you were saying earlier on, to cycle. And that privilege could now also change in the sense that we reorganize the whole of society and revalue the professions that were taken for granted. How could you imagine, as a creative person, where the balance would be most impactful for women, but also for children?
Yeah. I don't know if I can answer your question directly, because I mean, I think this thought gone through it, but I don't know if I formulated it yet. What I see or what I wish for, what I see as gifts, and I'm the optimist, and I've looked at this situation mostly from that angle too. What I see as gift is the fact that we put a pause button in a way that we've never done before, and long enough to start seeing things emerge, right? Whether you look at it from an ecological perspective and the fact that the skies clear up and pollution drops and you can hear the birds better because there's less traffic jams, all those kind of things, right? So that's a gift that we can consider. How do we want to learn from that and harvest from that and keep that? I think there's also this deeper connection, this deeper human connection, right? Some people say, people are getting nervous and they lash out. I've mainly experienced people taking the time to say hello as they walk past each other from a social distance. So there's an opportunity to reinvent or revisit how we want to interact with people and taking the time and realizing it doesn't take a lot of time to connect truly, right? I hope and I wish for a society that's flatter. Why do we need to have A jobs and B jobs? Why don't we have a job and a career that we pursue because we have a passion and we see it contributes to a bigger picture? And so from that regard, then you come to more of the gender thing where they say intuitively female societies is more community driven and flat, whereas masculine societies are more hierarchical and more competitive. So the pandemic and the situation gives us the opportunity to move towards more of the feminine societal structure. And that's what I would wish for the future.
When you look at the bigger organizations that are very important in this day and age, you see that when they sit together in great circles. So the feminine, the circle is very present. However, within that circle, there is hierarchy. Where do you find that in yourself, there is a certain hierarchy? In your own very personal setup as a professional?
I don't know. I've always operated and thrived in more of a masculine environment, right? So I've always had to go, achieve, deliver, perform, outperform, do better, exceeds expectations. So that's been my career life. So that's how I'm set up. Yeah, I don't know otherwise.
Okay. Obviously, this is a conversation. We are friends as well. Let us be transparent on this. We were saying earlier on, this could be the chance to really influence community, influence also family life. Imagine now you're 10 years further and you look back on this time. What would be the gift that you take with you from this time?
What would be I think there's going to be many. What I come to without, I mean, there's the dance of how much do you want to share in public, right? But for me, what's been, because I've always wanted to live, I've got a huge appetite for life in all sense and shapes, right? Whether it's I love chocolate, it's about I love to work, I love to live, I love to be creative, I love to have time with my family, and I want it all at the same time, right? So, which means I've missed a lot of stuff, right? I'm definitely missed a hell of a lot of stuff when my daughter was small because I pursued my career, right? And I also have a high commitment level. So I wanted to be 150% in all places. So then you experience the never perfect anywhere guilt trip things that many mothers experience. So now I the last couple of weeks I've gone like my relationship with my children has shifted. I mean, I think my son will never want to go back to school again. I told you that already. He's like, well, why would he? So whenever I try to work, he goes like, no. And my daughter, because there's nothing else, there's space to have lunch and dinner together. And that is so precious. So I'm trying to be realistic and know that once lockdown is over, that might not be the case, but nobody will ever be able to take away these moments that I've had, even if they won't carry on. So
you touched on something here. You were saying that many women experience the guilt between pursuing a career and being a perfect mother and the perfect spouse, etc.
yeah.
Any something that you would like to add on that? Because I think it's a theme that is very important. That might also inform how we could reorganize working life in general, also for men, because some men might also feel guilty about being often at work and having less family time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I think the gift in this is everybody can decide what they want to keep. I mean, we facilitate that conversation with others, right? What do you want to keep out of the Corona time, and what do you want to not ever have come back, right? So yeah, I wish for myself and I wish for others that they can make a decision on how they want to show up. And I think it's letting go of perfection, right? So many of my friends are also perfectionists. So if you add that on top of ambition and drive, yeah, then you will have guilt because it's never perfect. So it's the gift is really being more in the moment and the choice at that time. But society provides us with too many expectations and too many choices, which for me then becomes the pressure. So I think anybody now can decide how they want to live going forward. And maybe they don't change, and that's okay also, right? So that self-compassion to say, I'm here, I'm now, what's the gift? What can I take away? What do I find challenging and hard? And that's also okay. But the guilt's there, and it won't just go away overnight. You can go to therapy. It's still not going to change everything, right? Just accept and just see those things that you do right. But if you have high drive and you've got perfectionism, it's likely that you're going to feel you disappoint yourself.
So it's really the appreciation, you're saying, the appreciation of what is there, the appreciation of indeed having a space outside, indeed having more family time, etc.
Yeah. And it's first world problems. I'm not fighting, okay, my revenue may have crashed. But then you rethink how you live. I've got a roof over my head. We've got the outdoor space. We're more privileged than many, right? Yeah.
Maija, thank you so much for taking the time and to contribute to this mosaic of impressions in times of Corona. Anything you would like to add as a final word?
Oh, shared appreciation for this initiative and what you're doing. And I'm curious to see how the mosaic plays out, because I think it's going to be so powerful. And it's quite a novel experience on being on the other side. So thank you for inviting me in.
You're most welcome. Thank you, Maija.